So I find that I'm starting to have more and more conversations with people about social media. Now, there's some really obvious positive benefits of social media, like increased connection and awareness of what's going on around us, plus lots of learning that can happen on the internet. And social media has a massive presence in our daily lives. Now, this presence, when used in moderation and used intentionally, can provide great benefit. However, social media can also have a large impact on our relationships and our mental health as well. In today's video, I'm going to talk about some of the ways in which social media is beginning to affect our relationships and mental health, and maybe think of some ways to counteract this so that we can improve our relationships and well-being. To give this video a little bit of context, I'm just going to talk about some statistics that show how much time we spend on our phones currently. So here I'm reading that 5 years ago, the average phone screen time was 3 hours daily. 3 years ago, it was 4 hours daily. And now it's actually closer to 5 hours a day. Okay. Now, amongst younger adults and teenagers, that can be up to 6 to 8 hours daily. Now, with this increasing amount of time spent on our phones, it's becoming a distraction from our immediate environment and our interactions as well. And it's really clear that actually most of the time spent on our phones is on social media. Now, I'm going to ask you an interesting question here, and it might seem obvious to a few of you watching this video, and for others of you, it might require a little bit more thought. So I want to ask you, would you rather your phone drop out of your hand and break into pieces? Or would you rather break a small bone in your hand? Adam Alter, the professor of psychology and marketing, asked this question during some of his talks, and his findings are quite interesting. So when he asked this question to anyone over the age of 30, the answer's clear. Drop your phone, break that into pieces, protect the hand. However, when he asks it to people in their teens or their early 20s, it actually requires a little bit more thought. And it actually brings up some questions that I found quite interesting, such as, if I was to break a bone in my hand, would I still be able to use my phone and go on social media? So really that puts things into perspective, and I think a lot of this comes down to age as well. Some people are being brought up more with social media, others less so. Some more dependent on social media, again, others less so. But why is social media so addictive, and why has it become such a part of our everyday lives? Well, firstly, there's a clear goal. So usually on whichever social media platform it is, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be, there are functions to like, retweet, share, and so on. Now, all of these functions actually provide instant satisfaction to the person who's put that post out there. And this means that we all have clear goals. So we're trying to increase our number of followers, or we're trying to increase our number of likes. And this can mean that when we actually get that like, or we get a new follower, it's positively reinforcing our behavior of putting content out there. And this means that we try to do more of it in the future and repeat the behavior. So we post more to get more likes, and then we get more likes, we post more, and so on. And that's that positive reinforcement that's happening to create that behavior. We also live in a world at the moment where everyone is on social media. And if we're not on social media or certain platforms, we might feel like we're missing out. So that can be a real driver to engage with these platforms. And because we're always looking for things to keep our minds active these days, scrolling on our phones can often seem more interesting than our immediate environments around us. Now, next time you're on public transport, or next time you're in a queue, have a look at the people around you. Are they being in their environment, or are they looking at their phones? Now, I know for me personally, I'm probably going to be looking at my phone because I want my mind to be active. I want to engage in something. And our attention span a lot of the time is becoming shorter. And that's why we're also seeing that a lot of platforms are promoting short form content like Reels on Instagram. YouTube has a new Shorts function as well. And also things like TikTok have boomed recently because they're all kind of short form content. There's also no natural endpoint when we're scrolling through our feeds. So let's think about Facebook and Instagram. They're designed so you can keep scrolling. There isn't an end to that feed. And when there's not an end, it just means that we can be mindlessly scrolling, just looking at things and not really even taking it in. And because social media is so easily accessible, it can be a really easy way to kind of numb the pain from our own everyday life and become an easy distraction and a coping mechanism to deal with things. And social media companies are very aware of this. So they design their platforms to create an ideal experience for the user, which means that they continue continue using that platform. And they get this ideal experience from all the data that they're collecting. So they know what kind of videos or pictures that we're looking at, what kind of tweets we're reading, and they promote those types of content. And that's why when you go on your newsfeed, a lot of the time, you'll see kind of ads that are more tailored to you, perhaps where you've searched for things before, or there might be suggested users that you may not have heard of before, but these platforms are suggesting to you based on your previous use. And finally, there can be a sense of social obligation as well when your friends are posting and you feel like you must like or retweet or share whatever they are sharing. And that can also mean that that cycle continues with that continued use. Now, of course, as we spend more time on our phones, it means that we're spending less time doing other things. So we're probably less likely to be active when we're using our phones. Now, if you can imagine, it's really, really difficult to scroll on your phone whilst you're walking around or maybe even talking to someone. So most of the time our scrolling's done stationary. Now that can have a big impact, obviously, on our physical activity levels as well, but also just our engagement with our environment. Then there's obviously the impact it has on our mental health as well. And people often feel really disconnected from their environments, and they find themselves comparing themselves to others on social media as well, which can have a detrimental effect on the way that they're feeling. So I've got some statistics here for you. So it says here that 20% of people using social media tend to compare their life to others. It also says here that 14% of individuals scrolling through social media say that it affects their confidence in a negative way. One thing that really alarmed me as well, when we know about the negative effects of using screens around bedtime, is that 64% of 16 to 24-year-olds check their social media or emails when they can't sleep. Now we can just imagine, that can be a stressful activity. It can be a lot of information to take in as well. And we're doing that when we can't sleep. That's obviously not going to help sleep much. And the largest age bracket for this one, the 25 to 34-year-olds, 38% of people say that they check their work emails when on holiday. So obviously really, really difficult to switch off. Again, some quick facts here. So 33% of people on social media say it's a source of anxiety and stress. 29% feel a pressure to have an opinion or take a side on a topical issue. 47% of people have tried to reduce their online social media activity and been unsuccessful. And 32% of people say that they can't imagine a life without social media. These are big numbers and they're quite alarming when we first read them. Now, just imagine you're having a bad day for a moment and you flick onto, let's say, Instagram, and you are suddenly bombarded with 4,000 photos of everyone having such a great time. That obviously can make you feel already quite low. And obviously, if you're having a bad day, that's not going to be beneficial. Now, what we have to really remember about social media is that people only post the best parts of their lives. People don't post the day-to-day things or the things that aren't so great. Only what they usually post is, those holiday pictures, had time out with their friends, and it portrays their life as this amazing thing. And that's what we all do on social media. And that's not a fault necessarily of the individual, but that's just the culture around social media and the things that we tend to post. And we must remember that when we're looking at other people's posts, because it never is as good as it seems on social media, because it's only showing the best parts. Now, I don't want to come across like I'm painting social media in such a bad light. I obviously know about the benefits that social media does have, and obviously feeling connected to others around the world is so important. I think the last year during the pandemic has really shown that, and there's been a massive benefit of being on social media platforms. And I want to make it clear, if I thought that the impact of social media was only negative, I wouldn't be on any social media platforms. But what I think we need to be able to do is choose intentionally what we're looking at on social media and use it wisely and in moderation. And at the moment, social media is already affecting our relationships and so on. And it will just continue to do so if we don't change the way that we use it. So thinking again back to examples of what we might be doing when we're using our phones, or not doing, to put it better, is when we're using our phones, we are not able to engage with as much of a deep discussion with the person in front of us. Our attention is split between our phones and that person. And that can have a really detrimental effect on relationships. And sometimes we even actually choose to look at our phones rather than having a discussion. So if we're kind of engaged and we're flicking through something and someone wants to have a discussion, we might even find actually that we take ourselves out of that environment to carry on looking at whatever it is on our phones. Yes. hands up, I've been guilty to that before. It happens, but we just need to be aware of those things when it does happen. And this is cross-generational now. I wouldn't just say that this is only younger people doing this. I know a lot of family members and friends and parents of friends and so on who are more engaged on their phones than actually their children or their grandchildren. And I know lots of people, my own grandma included, who's amazing on social media and very tech savvy for her age, who are also on social media. And that's such a great thing because it means it's not just one generation interacting on these platforms. There's lots of interaction going on, and that can be really, really good. But also, we can't only blame younger people now for always being engaged with their phones, because we see it across all generations. Now, just take a moment here just to think about how many times in the last week were you having a conversation when either you or they were looking at their phone at the same time? It happens so often, I can't even think of a number. It happens daily. And have you ever tried to get someone's attention or tried to speak to someone whilst they're on their phone and it appears like they're not listening to you? Now, that can make you feel like that other person's quite rude, or, they're quite closed off to you. When actually, they might just be really deeply into the thing that they're reading. But it doesn't bring across the right impressions. You might have even found that people have been trying to get your attention before while you've been on your phone. And that can paint a really bad image. And it can also mean that your first impression of people, or other people's first impression of you, isn't that great because you're so engrossed with your phone. So this may be a problem. Now, what can we do to make sure that we're more present and engaging in the conversations that are happening around us? So one strategy is to have a no phone time or a no phone zone. And this may be at dinner time, for example. So let's say that you say at dinner time, there are no phones allowed. And I think that's quite a good rule anyway, and one that we should be able to stick to. You might even find that actually the kitchen is a no phone zone. So you stay away from using your phone in the kitchen. It can actually be useful to have a box where you put your phones in at a certain time or when you enter a certain room, to mean that there are no devices within that room that can distract your attention away from the conversations that you're having. Now, it's really important, whoever you live with, whether that's family, that's friends, or whoever you come into contact with regularly, even at work maybe, that you all keep each other accountable to this. It's much easier to do that when everyone's in the same boat, because it can be really difficult when you're trying to do it, but then the person next to you is on their phone, and the tendency then is to get yours out and continue. So making sure you're all in it together is a really useful way of tackling this. Another step up from this is actually having screen-free days. Now, this is something I've wanted to do for so long, and I have to admit I haven't been able to do a whole day of this. But actually saying to yourself, okay, let's say Sunday, I'm going to have a no phone day. Now, the thought of that, if that makes you a little bit anxious or, a little bit uneasy at that thought, then it might be a suggestion that we are a little bit too reliant on our phones. If you say that to me right now, I'm like, but I need to send out this social media post on Sunday and whatever, and that's probably why I haven't done it. And it's something I definitely want to do. It might be better to step up slowly, like any habit, in terms of start with small chunks away from your phone, and then maybe even move towards a whole day away from your phone as well. It's possible. It's happened in life before this tech generation, so it's easy to go back. It's just the habits that we form make it a little bit more difficult now. Something that can really facilitate our social media use is setting app timers on your phone. Now, a lot of phones these days, you can set a limit on how much you use a certain app throughout the day. So let's say for social media, you might want to limit yourself to an hour's use daily. You can set a timer on that, and it will actually then block the app once you've reached that limit. Now, again, you can then slowly extend that. So start off small, start off maybe by limiting your social media use to 2 hours daily, and then bring it down to 1 hour, half an hour, and so on. Again, if it makes you uneasy, probably a really good indication that this is something you should try, because feeling uncomfortable about something might suggest that, again, we are a little bit too dependent on using our phones. You can also track how much time you're spending on specific apps on your phone as well, and you can have a look at how much screen time you're using each day. A really good way at improving relationships and conversations is by being engaged, attentive, and present for all of your discussions. And when you're speaking to someone, you can make a rule for yourself that you're not to look at your phone. So you actively listen, okay, and you respond appropriately. And by doing that, you can really deepen relationships. Looking at someone in the eye rather than looking at your phone while you talk to them is a really powerful way of strengthening connections. And it can be a really good way of showing the other person that you really do care about them and what they have to say. And if you find that you're not able to have the time to have these discussions, call a conversation meeting. So it might be that you get your family around the table, you might have a cup of tea, or you might, just be sitting down for a period of time and just having a really good open discussion with them without the use of technology. It can be a really difficult road when you're first starting off doing the things that I've mentioned earlier. And it's really important to stay true to yourself and stay strong. So set an example for others and other people will follow. It's really important to promote the behavior that you want to see in others, because if you're not doing it, we can't expect other people to do it. So stay strong, lead by example, and hopefully other people will follow you. If you have children, this is particularly important, because if children grow up watching you on your phone all the time, it's very likely that when they get to their teenage years, they're going to display the same behavior. And it's really difficult to then turn around and kind of tell them off for doing that when they've been used to seeing you do that. So again, really important if you do have children to set that example early. As a final point, if you are spending less time on your phone, use that time to get outdoors, spend time in nature, taking in some natural light rather than the backlight from our devices, and be really mindful in the moment. So take in the sights, the smells, the sounds, and the sensations that you are feeling whilst you are in nature. And if you do have to take your phone, put it on aeroplane mode so you're not going to be disturbed. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you have got any thoughts about this, please pop them in the comments below. So maybe you found that social media has had an impact on your own mental health, or even you found that it's started to affect your relationships with others. If you do have any thoughts, please pop them in the comments below and I will get back to them. Again, similar with any questions, I will always get back to those questions. I'm also going to pop a link to a blog post I did on social media earlier on in the year, in case anyone prefers to read through some of the content to consolidate some of the stuff that you've learned in this video today. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon. Take care.